I've realized that I'm a selfish communicator, and I want to change. I need advice. I grew up as an only child. My ability to talk with people was based on my ability to connect them to myself or my life, rather than theirs. When people say things that I recognize or relate to, my automatic response is to say me too. And maybe start talking about an experience I've had or something that relates to the conversation. My brain automatically wants to connect almost everything somebody says to myself. I'm not a bad listener, either. I'm interested in people. I can sit for a considerable amount of time and not say a word, and just let the other person happily chat about themselves. But I hate these connections I make. I'm finding it really hard to stop them, and I feel like I'm going over conversations in my brain and feeling guilty over the amount of times I've started telling personal stories or butted in with a me too or that reminds me of this time my mum my dog did this. I do my best to always listen and rarely interrupt, and I've become decently good at it. I also neglect questions when I can in order to keep the focus on the person I'm chatting to. But at the same time, my brain is selfish. Often I'll wonder why somebody isn't interested in asking about me or hearing about my stories, instead of just being glad that they are talking to me. Sometimes I do just want to talk about myself, and I hate myself for that a lot of the time. I want to be less selfish as a communicator, not only for other people's benefit, but for my own. I don't really know where to start though. Trust me, you're not the only one. I am also like this, and I say am because it's just the way your brain works, and it's something you're going to have to actively try to change. Here are some things I do to combat my selfish communicative nature. 1. When you want to say something, say it. Limit it to one sentence. 2. If you've shared your experience, always segue back into theirs. Ask them a question about what they were going to talk about. This allows them to continue. 3. Wait. Just wait until they're done speaking, then you speak. After you're done speaking, ask a question. 4. Use active listening responses like really, how, when, how was that for you, etc. When you're doing this, you won't be lost in your own head thinking of your experiences. First, you are not the only one. I used to be, and work with lots of people like this. I often catch myself. My advice, just listen. You will want to share, but just don't. Use active listen skills, eye contact, face the person, open posture, be engaged and ask questions pertinent to their story and only their story. Don't compare and don't interrupt. It will be hard at first, because in your mind you have something important to share and just want to be heard. You can do it. You are not alone, and we all are just wanting to be acknowledged. Call this the "my black cat is blacker than your black cat" dilemma. Suddenly it's a competition for the best story. Once their story is done, just smile and move on. And think to yourself, they chose to share something with you, and you were a good friend just to listen. I used to be like this, and like you could see it, it would annoy me, but I hadn't yet learned of how to relate to the world in other ways. When I look back, I see I lost this trait after becoming involved with some political campaigns within my local community. Because when helping out with people's problems I couldn't relate to, I had to step back, because I had nothing to offer verbally. Also within these groups we would have conversations about how whatever circumstance we were discussing was impacting groups of people. Now I evaluate the world and its contents in terms of how it affects people in general, not just me. Although after responding to your post with a paragraph that begins with "I used to be like this," I do wonder, have I changed at all? Smiley face. I love it when a person who I'm sharing with relates back to me in this way. Whether my experience I'm describing is good or bad, I feel validated. There are people who can strike a proper balance, and Oppa's realized they're not one of them. When you compare everything being said to something in your own life and take over the conversation, this isn't okay. This doesn't have that balance. This is especially critical when someone just needs support from you. If someone is trying to vent about grief or stress and Oppa is taking over with their own issues, this is the problem version. It isn't really selfish provided you are making actual meaningful connections that contribute to the topic at hand and not just jumping in to dominate the conversation. If someone is telling a story of how they went through a hard time, you can genuinely relate to that hard time, and once they finish you connect their experience to yours in a meaningful way. There isn't anything wrong with that, that's just commiseration. If you are interrupting, missing the point or one-upping, that's another story entirely. If in the above example, halfway through your friend's story you cut them off and say that's nothing man, this one time I XYZ, then you are being an asshole. Learn the difference and you will be a better friend. Is it appropriate these days for me, M49, to defend my wife? F48. My wife was at a work function the other night and her boss grabbed her ass and made a pass at her. She doesn't want me to do anything about it and says she will sort it out, but I suspect she will sweep it under the carpet. The man in me wants to contact this guy and tell him I know, tell him what I think of him, and let him know that if this ever happens again I'll make sure everyone knows. I certainly don't want to go all gorilla and beat him up or anything, however, if I was there at the time and had a few beers under my belt things could have been different. But the husband in me also wants to respect my wife's wishes and not go there. Suggestions? Your wife is dealing with an assault on her body and her bodily autonomy right now. Most important thing for you to do here is support her in whichever decisions she makes. She is her own person and knows the best way to handle this. Again, I will reiterate that she is her own person, and that while this is upsetting to you when it happens to a person you love, it does not give you any right to undermine her authority in her choice here. She confided in you because she trusts you to support her here. After any assault, especially one of this kind, having someone go against the survivor/victim's wishes can often feel like an added assault. Psychologically speaking, her control was removed from her during this harassment, and for you to take actions into your own hands and ignore her wishes would be further removing her control, which is the last thing she needs. Quite honestly, after dealing with a similar assault, the absolute worst thing that happened when I confided in someone was them telling me that I didn't know the best way to handle the situation and trying to dictate how I should handle it. It made me lose even more trust and set back my emotional recovery. Support your wife emotionally and with anything else she asks you. Provide your own input on the situation if she asks for it, but you need to ultimately respect her wishes and her authority to handle this herself. I work in a sexual violence center and this is what we tell supportive people around the victims. Giving them autonomy to make their own decisions is very important. Respect your wife's wishes. It can be hard to watch someone you loved deal with harassment, but at the same time she is the one who had the experience and knows how she wants it to be handled. She should start documenting and getting evidence against him, in case she gets fired for eventually speaking up. Your wife has already been disrespected by her boss. The last thing she needs is for you to disrespect her too. I know you're angry, as you should be, but you need to hold back unless she asks you to step in. You could, with the best of intentions, wind up making things dramatically worse for your wife. Leave this one alone. Be supportive of her. Tell her how wrong what he did was and how it's valid for her to feel whatever she's feeling. But let her deal with it how she wants. Let her deal with it. It's her workplace, which is a bit different than some creep on the street. She should go to HR though. My boyfriend went out with another girl after cancelling the date we had planned. I'm writing because I don't know if I'm overreacting or not and I need advice. My boyfriend recently got a new job, almost all of his co-workers are girls, and one in particular helped him get the job and they've known each other for a couple years but have never really been friends. I've never met her and my boyfriend has maybe only mentioned her once or twice ever. On Friday, Our state announced new lockdown mandates, so we decided to only have virtual dates moving forward. We had planned a Zoom date for Friday evening and I was looking forward to it since I couldn't see him in person. But a couple hours before our date he cancelled and said that instead, he was going out to a bar with his brother and the girl co-worker previously mentioned. Told him I didn't think it was responsible to be going out to a bar when our COVID cases are breaking new records every day, but he said he'll be safe and that this was the last time he'd be able to go out for a while. I was frustrated he cancelled our date, and I was frustrated he was going out when earlier that same day we had both come to the conclusion we should quarantine for now. He then texted me saying that his brother couldn't go out with them but that he and his co-worker would still be going by themselves. He asked if I was comfortable with this and I didn't say no, but I didn't say yes. I was mostly wondering why did he want to go so badly. He said he just wanted to go out for a drink and that they were friends. I spent the rest of the night distracting myself and staying off my phone until he texted me a couple hours later asking why I was upset and not talking to him when I had the opportunity to tell him I was uncomfortable with it beforehand. I understand I messed up here, but I just didn't know how to put my feelings into words and I didn't want to seem lame for asking him not to go. We got into a pretty big fight as a result and now I don't know what to do. Am I being unreasonable for not being comfortable with him getting drinks on a Friday night with another girl after he cancelled our Zoom date? Or is this my fault for not speaking when I had the chance and telling him I'm uncomfortable? I know this doesn't seem like that big of a deal but I'm kind of at a crossroad here and I need advice. How you're feeling is perfectly reasonable. It was disrespectful for him to cancel his date with his partner in favor of seeing other people. It was irresponsible of him to get one last night out in the middle of a pandemic before restrictions come into place, as that's the kind of idiotic behavior that worsens pandemics, and it's very suspicious that his brother mysteriously couldn't make it such that he was left alone with this other woman. Yay. I bet his brother wasn't even invited in the first place. How convenient. What kind of BF cancels on his own GF to go out with another woman to a bar? Lol, he cancels a date with you and then wonders why you aren't talking to him all night? I didn't realize that canceling plans with someone still gave you the right to their time and attention. What an idiot. He's a dumbass. It sounds to me like he's testing her boundaries. You are definitely not overreacting. This is not okay for many reasons. COVID lockdown violations aside, did he even ask you to go out with all of them? No. I felt majorly left out. Wouldn't have gone anyways, but still. You feel like you were an afterthought. He cancelled you for something better and it turned out it was another girl. Be careful and watchful. To add to this, the BF clearly knew he was being shady or he wouldn't have asked if she was uncomfortable. And I bet had Op said yes he would blame her for being insecure. I also bet he wouldn't be happy if Op blew him off to go drinking with a guy friend. Op, I don't think you are being unreasonable at all and I also think your BG was very inconsiderate.